It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Hello, and welcome to another Monster Mondays. I'm Jeff Arbuckle, co-host of the podcast Film Seizure, that you can catch each Wednesday morning at filmseizure.com or at a number of podcast providers online. All right, everybody, tell me if you've heard this one before on Monster Mondays. Godzilla is a pretty big deal. I know, that might be news to you. Well, it's true, though. Godzilla became an international superstar pretty dang quick, after first taking a bow in 1954's Gojira, and then in the 1956 Americanized version, Godzilla King of the Monsters. What most people kind of forget, though, is that while Godzilla would be the most endearing giant monster to come out of the 50s, he wasn't the first. That goes to the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. And of course, before that, we have King Kong and Son of Kong in the 30s, and the equally as beautiful Mighty Joe Young in 1949, preceding Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. But for decades, we often thought of the 50s-style giant monsters, especially the reptilian ones, even though big bugs got their time in the sun too. We typically thought of Godzilla when we would think about that, and we would make reference to Godzilla whenever you would create a giant lizard-like creature, because that's just what we thought of. But it would be Ray Harryhausen's Rhedosaurus that graced the screens in The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms that really inspired Godzilla, who then launched the whole kaiju era of monster movies. After Godzilla appeared in two films that drove the youngsters wild in the Western world, Eugene Laurie, the Russian-born French director of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, returned with three more giant monster movies between 1958 and 1961. These would be 1958's The Colossus of New York, 1959's The Giant Behemoth, which I covered over 200 episodes ago on Monster Mondays, and this week's featured movie, 1961's Gorgo. Now, I think I might need to eventually cover The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, considering it's so important, but I digress. Gorgo was originally going to be a few different things. First, it was originally supposed to be a co-production with a Japanese company and was meant to be a tip of the cap to the Big G himself. And early on, the film was going to be set in Japan, but then the location of the film was changed to Europe. And if I had to guess, it might have changed because the Japanese company dropped out, but I'm not entirely sure on that. But that said, the movie was going to be set in France, but then that got changed and finally settled on being set in the United Kingdom, and specifically the British Isles and London, more importantly. However, the location drama wasn't finished yet. At one point, Australia was considered as a setting too. However, producers thought no one would really give a crap if Australia got attacked, so they wanted it to be London. And that's probably fair. Australian films wouldn't really come into view by the rest of the world, giving all of us a reason to pay attention for like another decade and a half or so. But as viewers will see in the movie's early stages, Gorgo first makes himself known on what's called Nara Island in the film. And that's actually an anagram of the Aran Islands to the west of Ireland. And I'm not sure why they changed the name of the island, but there you go. While the movie wasn't a major hit upon its release and was even the recipient of mostly sour reviews, there is something that it is kind of remembered for, and that's a rich color palette that was part of the usual look of cinematographer F.A. Young's films, and he was brought into this film, and this movie is strikingly rich in color. And by the late 90s, it appeared in one of the late seasons of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and got released several times over on home video. And just a couple of years back, it even got a 4K restoration from boutique Blu-ray company Vinegar Syndrome. It's been adapted into comic books several times over. It also has been given multiple quite nice, fairly large figures from Titanic Creations. They have gotten into doing a lot of their own monsters as well as licensing some of this era of the larger kaiju type monsters for release. So Gorgo is kind of living his best life right now. But let's talk about this big lug, shall we? The movie begins with Captain Joe Ryan, a treasure hunter, seeking goodies off the coast of Ireland. The crew of Ryan's ship is nervous about being near an active underwater volcano. Ryan is played by British actor Bill Travers, who was probably best known for appearing in MGM films in the 50s. His first officer, Sam Slade, the one who has to try to keep the men on board the ship from getting too nervous and mutinying, is William Sylvester. He's actually an American, best known for appearing in British productions like Devil Doll, Devils of Darkness, and playing Haywood Floyd in Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Anyway, when the volcano erupts, the ship is damaged, and when they explore what they can salvage from a nearby island, they find several strange-looking deep-sea creatures now floating dead on the surface of the sea, indicating that the volcano really did a number on the underwater landscape, if you will. Now, on the island, they meet a small orphan named Sean. He assists the island's harbor master. And he's got a pretty cool collection of Viking stuff. And Captain Ryan takes particular interest in something that has a sea creature on it. Almost looks like the front of like a Viking ship, like the wooden carvings of the creatures they typically had. And Sean refers to it as Ogra, the sea serpent. Now, when they do meet the harbor master, a guy named McCartan, the man is kind of gruff with them, and he only provides them with fresh water to take back to their ship. And after Ryan and Slade try to discover why the locals are kind of unwilling to share any information or supplies with them, they discover a diver that the locals were searching for had some gold on him, but it also seems to have died from fright. And Ryan and Slade decide to dive for the gold to see if they can find what these divers were looking for. But Slade has some reservations since they learned one guy that the locals were looking for never returned, and the one they found saw something that was so frightening it killed him. But while diving, they do end up seeing a reptilian underwater creature. And they talk about what they think they saw. And Sam says, whatever it was that he saw, he never wants to see it again. And later, when the locals believe the man who never returned earlier was gotten by a shark, they believe they are hunting that very thing only for Gorgo to surface and make landfall. Now, of course, immediately Sean recognizes that as Ogra. It's only later that he gets the name Gorgo, but we'll get to that here in a bit. Ryan and Slade assist the locals in trying to fight off this large creature, sending it back to the sea by hurling torches at it. Seeing others on the island waiting to get their pay from the harbor master so they can get as far away from this place as possible, Ryan and Slade figure they could be paid pretty handsomely if they can rid McCartan of the monster, therefore keeping all of these workers on the island. And they want as much of the gold McCartan has that he's willing or that he can part with, that he has stashed in a safe to do this job. And at first, Ryan thinks about how to kill the monster, but Slade ponders the worth of the creature if it was captured and taken alive. And Captain Ryan is surprisingly successful in capturing the creature, and the news of the capture is instant, but some believe it as a hoax. However, a couple of professors from universities, particularly Irish universities, come to request Ryan hand the creature over to them. It's not that they would not pay him for it, but Ryan doesn't really have any desire to give them the creature. Instead, he sells it to a circus who promised £30,000 and some off the top of the ticket sales, essentially making Ryan and Slade partners in the endeavor. Sean stows away on the ship, bringing Gorgo back to the mainland to try to free the creature, believing, one, what they are doing is just simply wrong, and two, freeing it will save them from a pretty bad fate. Now, upon arriving in London, the professors are dismayed the sailors sold the creature to the Dorking Circus. Gorgo is paraded through the streets of London while heavily tranquilized and strapped down on the back of a truck trailer. Dorking handles the press and explains that Gorgo is based on the ancient Greek Gorgon name, and is also quite aware that the Irish government is, well, possibly seeking legal procedures to get the creature sent back to them. But as Gorgo is placed into his enclosure at the circus, a member of the press takes a picture with a bright flash that awakens Gorgo, causes him to break free, and create a bit of a scary scenario for the circus workers, even killing one of Ryan and Slade's former crew members. Now, as Slade starts to doubt why they are doing what they're doing to Gorgo, and sad over the men they've lost in the capture and detainment of Gorgo, the professor studying the creatures reveal to Ryan and Slade that they now believe the creature at the circus is only an infant, and it's very likely a parent, one about 5 or 6 times larger than the captive, is going to be looking for her offspring. And sure enough, an even bigger Gorgo makes landfall on Nara Island and utterly destroys it. Now, realizing the Nara Island has gone quiet, the Royal Navy and Air Force are dispatched to see if they might be a giant Gorgo out there, and yep, there is, and is headed straight for London. But not before the Royal Navy attempt to blow the creature up, but that doesn't work out. You know how this goes. In fact, to avoid further fire from the British battleship sent to destroy it, Mommy Gorgo goes under the water only to re-emerge right next to the ship, capsizing it, destroying the ship with all souls lost. Slade thinks they need to immediately return baby Gorgo, but Ryan says he's crazy. After all, it's the 20th century. There must be a way to destroy the Mommy Gorgo and keep the baby Gorgo so they can keep rolling in the money. But in a drunken fit, Slade tries opening Gorgo's enclosure, but he passes out before he's successful. As the mother continues to close in on England, more subs and destroyers and battleships are sent to try to impede her progress, but you know how this goes. It's a giant monster movie. She just plows right through them. Mommy Gorgo makes landfall and is barely threatened as she makes her way toward the Dorking Circus where baby Gorgo is. And I will say there are some cool shots of the British military mobilizing on the streets and bridges in London, including seeing tanks and stuff rolling through. That's always a good sequence in a monster movie. But anyway, again, the rifles from the soldiers do nothing. The tanks don't even stop Mommy Gorgo from smashing landmarks in London and sending debris everywhere. Of course, we see Mommy Gorgo take down things like the Tower Bridge and Big Ben on her path of destruction. Probably one of the more memorable shots is of Gorgo laying waste to Piccadilly Circus, one of the most attractive areas, often highly populated with tourists and commuters and the like. However, after miles of destruction and destroyed landmarks, there is one last ditch effort to repel the larger Gorgo at the circus, and that is through a gigantic amount of voltage being sent through the wires surrounding the circus's land. But she just ends up destroying the structure with that gigantic amount of voltage doing nothing to her. And eventually, Mommy Gorgo reunites with her infant, and the two Gorgos then return to the sea peacefully, while we are left to ponder if man alone is truly the Lord of all creation. So let's talk about the things I like about Gorgo. First up, and yes, this is something to appreciate, Gorgo is only 77 minutes long. That means it knows best to, 1, not waste any time getting the action rolling, and 2, not overstay its welcome. Here we have a movie that is about a monster that is taken to the British Isles, and it turns out that it's the baby, and the mommy is gonna stomp in on the city and get her baby back. There's no reason to delay any of this action, and that works in this movie's favor. And it doesn't come right out of the gate with the monster. I mean, we get the volcano. We learn that there's some sort of secret around Nara Island that they're trying to protect. There are missing divers and stuff like that. And you know, we then learn that there is some sort of a creature in the waters, and it doesn't take long for us to get the monster. And from that point forward, the pace is kept pretty peppy. So Gorgo has some pretty good time management on its side. Second, I do like that this is a story that doesn't feature one Gorgo, but two, and the second one is bigger. Most of the time, we just see one of the monster in these movies. Most of the time, it's just one Godzilla or one King Kong. So we get a little more Gorgo for our buck here. And on top of that, the first Gorgo we see is already pretty large. I'd probably say it's like, 50 feet tall or something, and that's the baby. That's a great little twist we sometimes see play out in science fiction movies. There are whole Star Trek and Twilight Zone episodes that play with this concept. Something that's already impossibly powerful or large, but it's not even the adult. And it's a good little twist. Third, I guess there is a sort of combination of Godzilla in the sense that Gorgo is a reptilian creature, but it's also a little King Kong in the idea that Gorgo is made into a publicity stunt that people can come and gawk at, and there's people making money off of it. I think the movie also does something very interesting to kind of place you on the side of Gorgo. The primary protagonists in this movie are really kind of greedy and money-seeking, especially Captain Ryan. They had no intention of treating the creature like a living thing. They wanted money from the harbor master who had found a bunch of sunken Viking treasures, and the original plan was to kill the creature just outright. However, the plan changed when one of them pondered his worth if it was kept alive. So Ryan and Slade are not exactly good guys. They're always thinking about how they can make the money first. Of course, Slade does have a change of heart, but they are really out after monies. The circus guy, Dorkin, is also very interested in profiting off of Gorgo in his circus. Naturally, the plebes in attendance of the circus just want to gawk and laugh at the creature, thinking that we are the superior creature on the planet. It's actually a good idea to lean a little more into that element of the King Kong story, where this beast is taken out of its element and paraded about. Gorgo isn't the monster. His mother isn't really the threat. The evil in this movie is actually money and the basic lack of scruples behind how that is obtained. If Godzilla is kind of a pushback in very simple terms against nuclear warfare, Gorgo might be considered, again, in kind of simple terms, a pushback against the greed of capitalism. That wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. You can catch new episodes of Monster Mondays each Monday afternoon at filmseizure.com. Don't forget to follow Film Seizure at Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to Film Seizure to get both the Film Seizure podcast on Wednesday mornings and Monster Mondays on Monday afternoons at your favorite podcast providers, as well as YouTube. You can also check out my website, bmovieenema.com, to read new review articles every Friday morning. Next time, I pop this mysterious VHS tape into the VCR and try to survive the next 7 days after seeing The Ring. Until next week, stay spooky.